Roger Blackwood, and been with the church since 1956.
My name is Mary Alice Heaton, and I've been a member of St. Stephen's since the very, very, very beginning. Well, 1956 is when we had our first gathering to talk about doing this. We came to Troy in the spring of '55 from California, where we had been, Bill had been in the Navy.
My wife and I got started at Christ Church because my partner at that time was very active in a dinner group, men's dinner group, and he got me to go to that, and I went to that, and that's how we got started in Christ Church.
Well, I remember it well. When Bill and I first moved into our house in Charnwood, which was the spring of '55, the moving van had barely left when down the hill came this woman. And she introduced herself. She was obviously our neighbor, and it was Kitty Dewey. So we talked and about where we were from and everything, and found out in about 15 minutes' time that her husband, Bill Dewey, was from Flint also, and was a member of St. Paul's at Flint like I had been. And we knew the Dewey family in Flint very well. So she invited us to come to this Bible study group that some of the people in the neighborhood had going. So I thought, oh, Lord. But I thought, well, maybe we'll meet someone.
Well, it was mostly neighbors, Phil, like the Heatons next door to us, and the Deweys behind us, and the Potts and DeWitts and others, friends and neighbors. And that's how we got involved. In a neighborhood group, the so-called Adams Road Bible study group or whatever, Christ Church sort of sponsored it, yeah.
So off we went one evening. And I believe it was to Ann and Roland Deemer's house. And that's where this group, neighborhood study group is what it was called, of Christ Church, got started. And eventually, of course, Christ Church wanted us to become a mission church.
How did that come about?
Probably through Anne, because she is really the sort of leader of the thing. And I don't know, I just know that Christ Church was very crowded. Excuse me. And so they wanted to form 3 missions, which they did. Advent, Church of the Advent, Nativity, and St. Stephen's.
Well, Christ Church and St. James Church of Birmingham and the Episcopal Church in Rochester, the ministers of all 3 decided they'd like to try and set up 1 or 2 or 3 missions. And so they invited us. There happened to be 13 of us in this group by then. They invited us to Dorothy and Carl Zuber's house over on Squirrel Road in Bloomfield Township on this particular Sunday to discuss the forming of missions. That was a meeting I'll never forget. Well, it was positive. There were 13 of us there, and we were all positive about forming a mission. So that's how it got started. And Bart Lloyd was the one of the ministers from Christ Church, and he was there, and he decided to kind of lead us, and that's how we got started. We didn't mind. Matter of fact, it was a lot closer for my wife and I to go there than to go to Christ Church, but that didn't matter. We would set take turns setting up the church in the all-purpose room at Eastover School, where my kids went to school.
Cool.
Absolute chaos. We worked our fingers to the bone to get ready for this affair. And it took some doing. One thing we had to do was get the equipment to change the multi-purpose room, as it was called then, into a church setting. Of course, setting up the chairs was no big deal, but we had to get an altar rail, which I think Roland Deemer made. And we had to get a altar, which was a big sort of box thing, and it was on wheels. Is that what it was? No, I'm wrong. It was I think it was like a table, a door top with the legs that screwed into it. I think that's what it was.
So it was a kind of a
And
mixture.
then the ladies sewed. Dorothea Zuber, who was a very ambitious soul, got a ton of this pink, sort of dusty rose material. And we made kneelers, and we made a covering for the altar, and we made a large piece of cloth. We didn't make it, it was just a large piece of cloth, which the men would always have to throw up over the basket at the end of the room to hide it for the service on Sunday. Richard Jennings, who was a very excellent, superb sculptor, he made the cross along with, I think Roland helped him on that. And we begged and borrowed, I won't say we stole, but we begged and borrowed Eucharistic vessels.
We had a Sunday school, and so we were always studying the Bible.
Then, of course, there was the Sunday school situation, which was fun. We got the little round tables from the kindergarten, and they were set up down the hall with the chairs, and that's where the children were for Sunday school. In the beginning, we had numerous children. One thing we did was with the nursery children. I began that. In the beginning, I would pick them up at the church in my station wagon and drive them back to my house. And that's where they'd have Sunday school. And that went on for a while, and then, oh, there's so many of them. There were always more children than we needed. It's a good thing the state didn't get after us.
We had a Sam and Charlotte Walker were in the original group, and Sam had an old Chevrolet truck that he kind of donated to us, and we would keep all the church things in there, the temporary altar, the lectern, anything that we had the books and so forth, we'd keep in that truck. And one person or couple would be assigned to drive that truck to Eastover School before the service and set it all up, set the all-purpose room up as a church.
Yes, we set up on Saturdays.
Okay.
And that's where the famous truck comes in. So we were in teams, groups of two families or three families, depended. And you got the truck, and you went on Saturday and set up, and then on Sunday you repacked the truck, and the next family took the truck home with them, where it sat in their driveway all week. And of course, disreputable looking thing. Of course, the fact that the gas tank leaked was a major problem, as many times you'd come out on Saturday morning to drive to church and you wouldn't have any gas.
The truck would always have leaks to it because it was an old vehicle and not in good shape at all. And of course, all we do was keep it running, and that wasn't easy, and because of its condition. All right, now we'll have our truck prayer.
Or prayers for the people who had to deal with it.
Very strong bond of friendship and great relationships while we were having our services, and in between too.
Well, we were very pleased with ourselves, shall I say. Very happy. It was just that we were really doing something important, I think. And we didn't hesitate at all to plunge in, as it were, and start this. We were all very young. You know, didn't know any better. Oh yes, absolutely. We started very soon looking for property, at least, and thinking in those terms. And we were greatly encouraged by Christ Church.
Christ Church encouraged us to find a site for a church, and we did quite a bit of searching up and down Adams Road. And I'll never forget, I think Kitty Dewey called me one day and said, "Roger, there's an old farmhouse and barn and a sign on it for sale on Adams Road, south of Square Lake Road." So I immediately checked it, and we called the people, the owner, and got together and decided this would be a great site for us.
Oh, there were a lot of arguments, and lots of places were picked or looked at. But this finally came down to the place. There was a stable on here, as you may have heard, and it was pretty much on its way out. So with the help of Christ Church, we bought the property.
And so we talked to Christ Church because we didn't have any money, and Christ Church took a look at it, and they said, "That looks great. We'll provide the money to get you started." So they did, and we made an offer, and it was originally 10 or 11 acres, I forget exactly, and so we had the site, and then we decided we would hire an architect and then eventually a builder and build a building.
Then we started the fundraising. And we went to every house that you could possibly imagine in this entire area and got some money.
Now, Troy wasn't quite as.
Oh, we were doing some proselytizing too. Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Anyone who set foot in that school who hadn't been seen before was called on immediately. Yeah. Troy didn't become a city until just after we moved, 1955. And it was farmland. Absolutely. Oh, we went through all sorts of things. The thing is, we had our first neighborhood meeting on Advent Sunday in 1956. So, of course, everybody said, oh, this will be the Church of the Advent. No, it would not be, because they'd already gotten in ahead of us a couple of weeks, I think. So then we started thinking of things, and well, there were a lot of good names and everything, and finally one day I said, what about St. Stephen's? And that's when I was appalled to find out that there were people who didn't know who St. Stephen's was. St. Stephen. I could not believe that. Well, anyway, we got that straightened out, and there was a big vote, and that's what we got.
We decided we would form a committee for the architectural work and the builder and so forth, and I was chosen to be chairman of the building committee. And then as chairman, I appointed several chairmen of different committees. And by the way, Bill Dewey, who is a CPA and with Chrysler at the time, we all appointed him chairman of the mission, and he was the first chairman. But the committees we had were small and very active. They were very active and got things done. We got things done in a hurry. Well, that was great. I remember that, and I've seen that footage too. We measured off. Pictures were being taken of all of that.
Well, here we got groundbreaking, and you want to talk about suits and dresses and hats. I nearly die when I see that hat of mine at the groundbreaking. Well, it's just like walking through any field in high heels. You turn your ankle a lot. There I am in my hat. Oh, Lord, have mercy.
Of all of that. And then, of course, construction began, and it took, well, it was less than a year, but the first building was built then. And that's the Christ Church. Christ Church, in fact, they loaned us some money for the land, and then eventually, when we went to build the church and start the building, they said, well, we're going to forgive that loan and we're going to let you have that land. And I'll never forget, we were at a mission meeting to listen to Christ Church say that. And what surprised me is one of our mission members said, well, I don't know whether we ought to do this or not. And I said, no, wait a minute. They're going to give us the money. Why even talk about it? And so it was really funny, but they gave us some money, so we didn't have to come up with that money. But pledges, by the way, were quite ample to cover all these expenses. And then we had in 1961, I think it was May 5th or so, was when we marched from the Eastover School behind the Salvation Army Band, and we marched to the church for the first service that was held there.
Oh, I remember it was simply wonderful. The police stopped the traffic on Adams Road, and people came I know that people from our neighborhood in Charnwood drove down and parked along the side of the road to watch this. And, well, it was just wonderful. It was exciting. It was great. So we arrived at the church, and the bishop was there, of course. And he knocks on the door.
And I remember, too, that my son, who was 1 year old at the time, was baptized at that service. And so anyway, we moved into the church and the original building, and everything went fine from there on.
That's a very hard question to answer. Of course there are changes. Number one, there are more people, which is a good thing.
Well, of course, size is one. You know, we were a small group, and I think was probably the main difference.
I mean, there's more emphasis maybe, I think there's more emphasis on outreach. And I think, frankly, that we do a wonderful job of outreach at St. Stephen's. Now, I think our social outreach is a little different. It's more of a, really what I see now is more of a one-to-one situation. For instance, going up to Baldwin Church and Center on those Fridays, that's a one-to-one thing.
Here, and the one thing that I think a difference is the children. And our children today are very active, and there are just lots of them, and that's a great thing. Now, we did have a lot of kids back then, but they weren't as much in the foreground as the children are today. I think the children today are, most of them are very active in things like the junior choir and different things of that matter. And so I think that that's a big difference.
It seems to me we struggle more with the economics of the place than we did even in the beginning, when we didn't know where our next cent was coming from. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, along about in the early 60s, there was a survey or something done that St. Stephen's average donation per week was like the second highest in the diocese. it was amazing.
Well, I think it was very good. When I look back, I've never been a deeply religious person, nor was my wife, but it really influenced our lives greatly, being involved in this and going to church, which we had never done regularly before. But of course now we did. I mean, we just went every week. We didn't miss anything unless we were away on a trip or something.
Well, it certainly made it better. It enlarged it, shall we say, made it firmer. You came to realize that this was your family. And never more was that true than when Bill and our family were in that horrible automobile accident in 1967. Everybody just rallied around like you wouldn't believe, since we were completely out of it for so long. And it really is just, I don't know what I'd do without St. Stephen's and what they've taught me.
I think so, because it's kind of a time of sacrifice, Phil, where you know, we need money, and you put in more money than you maybe can even afford, and whereas today, well, people are doing it today too, I'm sure, with tough times and in the financial community and so forth. So they're going through a lot of the stuff that we did in a way. But a lot of it is financial, I think.
Kind of experience.
Sure. Sure. I think, you know, time today seems to be so much more crowded for these younger families. I'm sure a part of it is because 9 times out of 10, both the parents work. The children are going to this, that, and the other thing constantly. We didn't have that sort of thing back then. We had, I just think we had more time. Now you struggle to get a meeting on a day when people can come. So I think, sure, you do miss some of that.
Well, there probably are, Phil, but I can't remember them off the top of my head.
No, I can't think of anything now, but I will when I go home. No, it's just a wonderful place.